Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of 49 Volts. It's only been a couple weeks this time, so we're getting better. We're getting better. I'm your host, as always, Josh, and today we have an awesome guest, someone that when I worked for manufacturers, this gentleman was really respected, really liked, treated everyone really well, really knows his stuff, and was a director of sales engineering, and before that, a sales engineer with one of the largest integrators in the Southeast, if not the country. Very pleased to introduce Tristan Soule. Tristan, how you doing?
Doing very well. Thank you for the invite, Josh.
Yeah, I'm really glad you came on. So I had Amber Fallon on a couple weeks ago, and she's been a sales engineer for about 10 years. And I find the sales engineer role to be pretty interesting because everybody feels some kind of way about it, and it really just depends on their own perspective. I think a
Sure.
salesperson has a different viewpoint versus maybe the sales engineer themselves or the sales manager. I mean, you've got nearly 2 decades of experience, all in the security realm. If I cornered you on an elevator at the trade show again, how would you describe that role to somebody?
I agree with you. I think that is a role different people have different definitions for. And since I've done it for so long, I might be a little biased, but I believe it's a very vital part of the sales process, even all the way through implementation. To me, the sales engineering really role. Is pretty much the smarts and parts of the sales process, working with those account managers, doing the discovery with the end users, and really trying to figure out what the need is, not just what the want is, but actually trying to figure out what the need is. And so that can go a couple of different ways, uh, depending on what the need is and the want. That could also having discussions around the budgets or whatnot, and then also, so in my opinion, everybody's got Cadillac eyes, but not always the budget will always fit the Cadillac eyes. So
Right.
sometimes it needs maybe a little bit of scaling down, but being able to know your different levels of offerings is going to be very important. So that could be coming the subject matter experts on which product lines may suit which end users the best. Um, so to begin with, I think there's a discovery process with it, and which will go in. And again, that could be a site visit, conference calls, whatever it might be, to actually collect a lot of the data up front, which would roll into the a design phase that can be putting as built together. There's different resources out there for softwares to, whether it be plotting a camera, plotting what kind of where the door might go, an enunciator, power supply, a switch, or just a cabling pathway. Really having a lot of that up front is really important, not just for the understanding of what the design is for the end user, but also if there's going to be a PO at the end of the sales process, that's a great scope and something to follow for the implementation team. Um, and so through from that design, what we always did was also proposal creation. So proposal creation could be working up the quote in whatever quoting tool anybody's using,
Yeah.
and working up the scope of work. Again, also a verbal scope of work so there's a clear identification of what is the responsibility of us as the integrator, and maybe there might be some responsibility for the end user as well too. So and working on that scope, you're also putting your bill of materials together and then coming up with the pricing. So you also have a tight relationship with your manufacturer partners. You have a tight relationship with your distribution partners. And also if there's some OEMs and vendors out there that might not use the typical channel sales process. So you're also working with them, helping do some of that design. So you got all the correct parts and pieces in place, and presenting that. And then again, once you kind of once you complete that whole proposal creation, then a review, obviously, with it could be the end user, the account representative for that end user, making sure all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and then presenting that to the end user and that could be, again, that could be just an email That could be in front of the customer. That could be maybe just a handoff over again to the account representative to present that as well too. So for me as an integrator side, those are typically the steps and processes that a sales engineer would go through, and what some of my team members have done in the past.
It's a tremendous amount of responsibility because I feel like, and the knowledge level of a salesperson tends to vary. When I was in sales, I was seen as somebody that was a little more independent and technical, and there are others that are just really good salespeople, really good at being a good advocate for their customer, but they don't know much, and they really rely on you to produce the best design, the best solution, the best result. True. And that's kind of in your court, as well as I think something that a lot of people don't think about is whether you're doing a proposal directly to a customer or whether it's for like a government or publicly funded where it's more of a bid. There's always a lot of work that goes into not just what is the design and what are you going to propose and what's going to work best, but there's all these little things that have to be done, to get that proposal in order.
There is, because it's really, so you're earning the trust of that end user, also being the subject matter expert on the sales portion of it. But you're also making sure you have, again, your I's dotted, T's crossed when it comes to implement the whole process, that you're not missing a camera, or you have the incorrect door hardware, because just little mistakes like that could end up going from a very profitable installation to not quite so much, or end up being in the red somehow. Yeah. So it's very meticulous and a lot of detail to it. And also that's why, and a lot of people will also think that the sales engineering process can be a bottleneck at times, because it does take so much time. And if people are okay with just, having a labor line item and a material line item, and then figure it out on the back end. I know a couple of people and companies that do that out there. That's fine, but just know even after that phase, you got to figure it all out again. So in my opinion, why not show the customer up front, almost even itemize, hey, this is what you're getting. You understand what you're getting. And once you have that delineation up front, I think you have trust again with the end user, and they're going to want to keep doing business with you. And if there is a scope creep along the way, they're probably a little bit more okay and acceptive of a change order coming down the line.
Well, I think a lot of mistakes are made on the integrator side, because I did that for 20 years. My rule of thumb was, especially once I was in charge of integrators, my rule was that the proposal should also be enough to instruct the team on how to install it.
Yes.
All the materials should be displayed. All of the tasks, like the scope, should be not exciting and interesting. It should almost be a step-by-step of each phase of the project. And it's a lot of work up front, and a lot of people would complain about that. But once you get into the implementation, a lot of your project management, at least setup, is done. And I think the projects go well. Like you mentioned, scope creep. If you don't tell the customer exactly what is included, they'll just assume it's included. Why would they not? Right. We forget they don't do this every day. We do. And
correct. And
I think some people,
sorry about
that.
Yeah,
I was just because some people see it as a risk. Like if I give them too much information, they're just going to do it themselves or give it to my competitor. I always saw it as a risk. If you don't tell them enough, you're going to have a real hard time and possibly a rocky relationship trying to explain that, well, no, that wasn't covered, yet you didn't give them enough information to know that.
So I agree with you. I've been in both situations, right? I've been in some situations where you've gained the trust. Now you have a customer there for life, right? So now you have a negotiated work that came out. Maybe it was a bid, maybe it was a design build or whatever, but they have more trust in you going forward. But I've also lived a life of where you've given a lot of this documentation, you've supplied the drawings up front, and they went and shopped you. Yep. Sometimes, and unfortunately, sometimes those aren't going to always be the best customers, and and sometimes it's okay to walk away.
Yeah, for sure. And I think honestly, if you always do it the right way, like no matter what you do it the right way, you do it the wrong way, you're overly inclusive with details, you're overly obscured to protect yourself. if you're in business, you're going to have relationships that aren't going to work out, and you're going to have customers. You're going to have, unfortunately, at times vendors that just aren't going to be good to work with. And that was going to happen regardless. So you may as well just do it the best way. And so that when you have all the right customers, everything goes well.
I think it's an integrity thing as well too, right? So for me personally, I want to do what's right. I don't want to go cheat out there. I don't want to just go make a sale to make a sale. To me, that's one thing that I've always been big about is what's right by the end user, you know. And if you prove that, are there going to be some out there that are going to take advantage of it? Yes, but my experience, the majority of them will accept it, appreciate it, and want to keep doing business with you. Yeah. So it's a fine line. We've all been burned. It's just part of it, you know, but you've got to just accept it and move on to the next sometimes.
Yeah, boy, have I been burned a couple times, but so obviously I've worked on both sides of it, manufacturing for about 10 years, the integrator side for over 20. From your perspective, because you worked with manufacturers a lot, that's how I know you, because I was a manufacturer. I mean, do you perceive that the role is any different at the manufacturer level? Do you think that it's uniquely different than what you do on the integrator side?
I don't know if I'd say uniquely. I definitely think there's some similarities. But what we've always used, so one thing we were able to do before in the past was actually do a lot of our own demos. I think there's a lot of value when an integrator, since that's the life I've lived for so long, is able to show that, hey, I can do a demo. This is the product, and go through it. But when sometimes some companies get quite a bit of offerings, you know, and you got to use those. I think you should use those resources. So one thing we've always used most recently was bringing in a sales engineer from the manufacturing side, because they're working with it every single day. So they might know exactly all the ins and outs, and might already have a whole presentation set up as well too, to be able to provide that for the end user and let them to be able to evaluate it. But I do believe as similarities that the sales engineer from the manufacturer side, same as the sales engineer from an integration side, we're both support tools, right? So we're not there to close the deal. We're there to help support closing the deal, and giving a solution, right? So I think there's some differences on when it comes down to like maybe scope of work creations, proposal creations. Because on the integrator side, I got to know what kind of cable. I have to know, you know, am I going outside? Do I need conduit? I need to know, you know, again, is it going to integrate? Is my camera system, my VMS, going to integrate with my access control system? And where on the manufacturer side, what I've seen is obviously they're just going to provide their solution. Doesn't have anything to do with A, B, or C, or X, Y, Z. All the other parts and pieces that might need to go into a solution, switching, you know, all the other peripherals out there. So I think there's some similarities, but when you get into the integration side, I think you have to know a little bit more about everything and not just a specific brand.
That to me is the biggest difference. I think you're almost doing the same things, and I think sales engineers are like product managers. You know, I've been a product manager. I don't think that what it was like for me would be the same in any other company. I think product management is different in each manufacturer, each software company. I think sales engineering is similar, but you have there's still a lot of similarities. And I think the biggest difference is, you know, the last time I was with an integrator, I started one from scratch, and we did, you know, security, audiovisual, telephone, structured cabling, outside plant, wireless. I mean, we did a lot. So the sales engineers really they never got to be as much of an expert in any one thing unless they already were. You know, like I had some folks that knew Crestron inside and out. Well, they didn't know the Extron as well. They didn't know the security as well, but they would know it well enough, and they would work with manufacturers to fill in the gaps and to make sure that they felt good and sound with the design. But I do think that's an advantage maybe with the manufacturers. You get to know that product really, really well. I mean,
Oh, for sure.
it's
Yes.
it's like you just get to specialize on it. So I guess that's good and bad. So if you like to learn a lot and you always like to experience new things, maybe that's not as good. But I do think that maybe that's why a manufacturer sales engineer always looks so sharp. It's just because they get that opportunity to just know their own product inside and out, and they've seen it in so many environments. And
Absolutely. They might know. So let's talk about cameras and VMSs. If they're going to be doing a camera solution, one of the manufacturers for them, they might know some of the VMSs that are out there, because now we're talking about we're talking about AI all over the place nowadays,
for sure,
on the edge, on their server, whatever kind of flavor people are wanting nowadays. But now they're also going to need to know what VMSs are capable of using some of their edge analytics and which ones are not. So maybe some need to know a little bit more depending on what the manufacturer is and if it's being implemented on certain kind of softwares. But to your point, as an integrator, and I see this as integrators, everybody's trying to do one throat to choke. They want to offer everything, whether it be low voltage or anything like that, which I think is a great idea. It's what end users want to hear as well too. But then who are going to be your subject matter experts along the way? Just like you were talking about, and we had an AV person doing 5sec or vice versa. Maybe they are going to use some of the resources and the manufacturer to be able to, understand it enough to put it together. But who's having that intelligent conversation with the end user and gaining that trust at that time?
Yeah, for sure. It was a challenge to do all those things. I don't know if that's really I guess to your point, I mean, there are people that still do it. I don't think it's as big as it was. I think people have started becoming more specialized again and more focused again. But in the early days, it was hard because I had an AV person and a security person that were dealing with 5 disciplines, and only one was their own,
Right.
And then over time it grows where you start to have, I always wanted to have a path for people to get promoted out of the field. So you would have people who were installers, technicians that would get to move up and learn those types of roles. And you would pick up people along the way that were a little more focused, but I wanted it to be cross-training for a reason, because the way I did it, the sales engineer almost helped with the project management on the back end. They were a little more involved on the back end. And so if we were going to produce these solutions where it was, as you say, one throat to choke, it helps to understand the other solutions too. But it's hard because there's so much to know. And I think that's gotten worse, not easier.
Yeah.
I think things used to be a lot more simple. And there's just, things move a lot faster now. So
they do. I mean, the technology, new cameras are coming out, it seems like weekly, different capabilities, new chipsets, new AI possibilities, new manufacturers for whether it be software or a tangible product. You just go to some of these shows, whether it be the ISCs or the GSXs, and it's some of the products out there some areas are just growing exponentially, and there's more and more and more. Obviously there was a slowdown due to the pandemic we had a few years ago, but when I was out in Vegas this year, it probably was just as big, if not bigger, than some of the ones beforehand.
I think ISC West is growing again, honestly. I mean, the last couple of years have been amazing. Obviously when I worked with you previously as a manufacturer, I was working for a cloud provider, and I spent 6.5 years trying to help cloud become the next thing in security. And we used to hear about it a lot. And I don't feel like I ever felt that aha moment where cloud really took over. In fact, I don't even think that we hear about it that much anymore. I mean, what do you think of the state of cloud? I mean, do you think cloud quietly became successful and we just don't need to hear about it? Do you think it just didn't really pan out the way everybody thought? I mean, what's your perspective on that?
I go back and forth a little bit on it. I've always been pretty old school, even when it comes down to like wireless devices. I'm a hardwired person. So I'm kind of like, hey, if I have it on prem, I feel good. I feel pretty good about it. I think people were coming up with cloud over the last 10 or so years a little too quickly, just maybe try to gain some market share out there and just put their name on it. And it just never was maybe and it still probably isn't a perfect product. Um, but the way I'm seeing cloud, there are a few I guess it really depends on verticals at times.
Mhm.
I think where you're going to see some of these big manufacturing and critical infrastructure, hospitals, some government things, they're probably going to be sticking with some on-prem solutions. That could be based on how their network's set up. That could be based on quite a few things, probably on maybe a cybersecurity, some rules that they have. Where I've seen cloud probably actually increase the most and do probably a little bit better job is either in that SMB market, maybe some managed services. People can roll that into it, um, and but I think cloud is still getting there. I don't know if it's all the way there yet, just because of some limited offerings and items you're able to do with it, and you're depending on others. So again, I'm a little biased because I'm old school, so I am an on-prem person. But
Mhm.
I think what we're also seeing is people, whether it be integrators, manufacturers, software providers, everybody, there's a huge push for RMR. And so if people are presenting that to their end users and saying, hey, this is where you want to go, this is the future, and they have that trust, they're probably getting the end users to buy into that. As if it's doing what that end user what it needs to do and doesn't need all the complete bells and whistles as some other systems, sure, fine, no big deal. But I think where you're going to see cloud really take off is really the huge push for RMR across the board. That's one of the biggest conversations I'm in with everybody is how do we get the reoccurring?
Yeah, which is a good business reason. I don't know that that's a good end user experience reason.
Oh, agreed.
I think that's part of the problem is I felt like we were selling the exhaust and the tail out of the tailpipe, not the powerful engine.
Yeah.
Because I was in IT before and I remember the revolution that took place. And I used to get, and I expressed internally where I've worked frustration about this because, I felt like everyone's saying, well, I felt like there was almost an attitude of the manufacturers in some cases, not everybody, where they had just kind of this kind of crummy attitude towards the integrators. Like, well, you just don't get it and you just won't even make it. You'll just be gone because you just don't get it. I'm just thinking like, you don't get it. Like, you don't even understand why this happened in IT. It happened not because people wanted to pay it as a subscription. It happened because IT, which I think marketing is becoming this way in a different way, is there's so much to know and there's so much complication that no one can be expert in all of it. And so in the 90s, when I was a Microsoft certified systems engineer and a certified Novell engineer, and I did IT work, you were seeing more and more that, like, Joe's HVAC, they'd hire an IT person and they would manage their IT. Well, somewhere at the intersection of not one person in Cisco tech support knows all the Cisco products alone and the cybersecurity issues that were happening that are so hard to stay on top of, it became realized that you need a lot of people with a lot of different knowledge sets. You needed teams to manage these things. And most businesses are not giant businesses. Most businesses can't afford a 30 or 40 person IT, department. And so managed services to me rose out of that because it took something that was becoming a huge headache and a huge complication and was overwhelming. And the service was getting to be bad because I think a lot of the traditional IT consultants, they did this thing where they would just call the person in the house that had a million other things to do and then would use them as their implementation tool to try and make things happen. So
Sure.
you had managed services was like, okay, I'll pay for that because you just took that headache off my plate. And things always run well. Things are predictably fixed and taken care of. And in that same moment, cloud was allowing a lot of the hardware expense to go away, because I don't think people even remember how expensive it was just to have an Exchange server. Between the constant licensing, the hardware upgrades, the hardware licensing, the hardware support, and those things would cost so much money. And then, you'd reach a point that the hardware couldn't support the latest software anymore. And now you're forklifting that piece of hardware out of there. And then I think as you go managed services, a lot of these subscriptions just became a part of the managed service. So it wasn't like a bunch of line items for them to chew on. And if you talk to a lot of IT people, they'd say, well, I don't want to break this out. Then they're going to question it. We just want to make this a part of the service, part of what we give you. And it's just that all for one package. And then in security, I feel like we looked at that and said, cool, what everybody wants to do is buy a subscription. Well, no, like the people that are the most successful selling these subscriptions will tell you, don't do it that way. So I don't think the security industry, I don't think we stopped to really understand the cause and effect about why so many things went cloud and why there were subscriptions. And then we just kept shouting, you're all a bunch of dummies, until somebody would figure it out. And I don't think there's a lot of education on, first of all, understanding, is security in that realm? For example, like, is that the same kind of business problem for the everyday business that like IT is?
Right.
Because that has a lot to do, in my view, with whether the managed services make sense or not.
No, that's a good point. And so
so we're selling cloud just to say it's cloud. I think happened too much, not enough. Like, what's the benefit? And there is.
I think the largest benefit is when it might come down back to like budgets. And I've talked to like some smaller, some SMB clients, and when I talk to budget about them, I'm like, okay, so what's your capital expense? What's your operating expense? Hey, maybe we can move some stuff around. And even the people that are getting, that seem to be purchasing this the most, don't really have a cap or OpEx. They just have a budget. So they're not even thinking that way. Cause I think that was one thing that was kind of taught to us was, if you're doing this as operational, now you can budget for this, month, year to year and everything like that. But I think I think that's helpful on some people who are looking at it in a budgetary stance. But as a software and a solution itself, I still think there's a long way to go with, with some of the analytics. I understand that some of them do analytics, so I don't want to down and that by any means. But if there's a company that just needs, okay, I need my system to, we'll just say video right now, to record and play back. Okay, no problem. But if you want some of the other bells and whistles and they're not worried about some cyber security issues, then maybe that's a different conversation as well too. But I don't think, to your point, I don't think we're educated nearly enough. And I will speak from my own experience. I am not completely educated nearly enough on, the whole IT side and where it came from and how we got here. But I do agree with the managed services. Now somebody can sit behind a desk, without having a VPN or remote desktop or whatever it is, getting to the system to try to fix it, and might be able to, rectify any problems this end user might be having as a managed service provider, besides rolling a truck and going to check on this or that, or a PoE power recycle, which you might be able to do again from just a console 100 miles away. So, I mean, to your point, managed services is probably where it came from. It helps. I find the benefit, but is that a benefit for the end user?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to be so large as an end customer for that to be the same kind of burden that IT is, because every business has IT. I'm a small company. I have IT. I mean, you're just not going to get away from that. But for smaller businesses, I mean, they don't need as much complication, and they, quite frankly, can have a very simple security solution, and they're not really calling for help a whole lot, right? I mean, But I do think where cloud misses the boat is, and I see some that do a better job of it. I think you got to be focused on just what are the benefits of the solution. I don't actually think the end customer cares if it's cloud. Because I would often hear from integrators, well, nobody's asking for cloud. Well, nobody ever did.
Yeah.
Nobody asked for cloud IT. It made more sense. They said, hey, we could host this instead of having this Microsoft Exchange server. You pay $10 a month per user, and it's just always up to date. Right. You don't have this hardware anymore, and it's an easy sell. You're saving money. The same thing happened with phones, and it actually killed the telephone industry, because we would go into a doctor's office and they would spend $8,000 to $10,000 on a phone system that was still pretty basic. But then they could come in and get like a ShoreTel Connect Cloud solution that we offered, and for $35 a month, and for another $5, they could get a phone that's included and replaced, even if the doctor gets mad and dumps coffee on it. They get a new one shipped in overnight.
Right.
And they get all the features as if they had spent, $75,000 on a full unified communication solution. I mean, they got everything. So I think security's got to find its own way. I think we got to stop looking at IT. We got to stop looking at the other industries. We got to figure out where does it make sense for us? Where does it really hit? Because it's not going to be the same as the other industries.
No, and I think you have a point there when you're talking about phones and even down to access control, because you don't have nearly as much data transmission
for sure
as well too. But when you start saying, hey, I have 100 5-megapixel cameras or more, what now we're talking about even bandwidth limits. So where am I storing? Am I able to store it locally and then push it, or what's that whole infrastructure look like? And I think when you get to larger deployments, which I know there's some out there, I've been part of some, but that's a whole nother conversation that needs to be had, of infrastructure. What's your pipeline look like? And are there peak times? Are there low times? And I don't know if everybody's having those kind of conversations as well too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know for a fact that comes up a lot, but that's why I always believed like a hybrid approach was better instead of being fully hosted.
Sure.
And I don't remember how much you went and worked with them, but I know Verkada is an example of, people don't think of them as this, but they are a hybrid type solution. I mean, they are what I would call cloud managed, because really it was recording on the cameras is default what they wanted to sell. And the camera had the local recording, but you managed it in the cloud, and that really kept your bandwidth usage down. And, many others, like the companies I work for, accomplish that with a singular gateway, instead of just the camera. But I think that's definitely the future for cloud and video, because a wise man once told me when he needed to use the restroom really bad, he said, you can't compress liquid. Well, you really can't compress video that way either. You really can't.
Everybody has their tricks, right? Okay. Your I images and your P images or something like that, right? If there's not a whole bunch of change. So everybody has their ways to get around it, but also somewhere it has to decompress, right? Whether that's going to be on the camera side, server side, client side, somewhere there's going to be a little heavy lifting somewhere.
No, for sure. I mean, I don't know how we're going to get to a place where video is that minimal data stream where you could really do that at scale constantly without very large pipeline.
Yeah,
we're not even close.
Just look, I mean, these cameras are getting crazy megapixels. They're just increasing in megapixels.
They're getting bigger.
So I get more lenses, more lenses per device, higher megapixels. We're just adding to the load.
Yeah, the camera manufacturers are not on the same sheet of music there. They're like, dude, we could give you, you could look at the pin cushion on the moon. I mean, just they're getting so big and pushing so much data. But no, I think my personal opinion is cloud has sort of happened, and people will use it where they will use it, and it will continue to evolve and get better. And I think the days of cloud being a buzzword, and that's what people are out there trying to push. It's clouds. You should move to the cloud. You're going to struggle as an integrator if you don't have a cloud strategy. I think a lot of that's gone. I think honestly, when AI happened, everyone just forgot about cloud.
Yeah, I think it's still a conversation. I mean, so going back to the main factors, I think it goes back to some marketing as well too. Some people go after the industry, market their product a little bit differently than others, and I mean, you're into marketing. Marketing works, you know.
Yeah.
So it just depends on sometimes for the manufacturer, or it doesn't even matter which company you're in. It works. Depends how much how much funds you're willing to put into it, and where are you going to put it for the most eyes to see as well too. So
people focus on the benefits.
People buy. Unfortunately, I mean, it's kind of going back to what we were saying. Maybe it's not always the best solution, but people are going to buy what they're almost told to buy.
No, for sure. And I think marketing works, and I'm a big fan of marketing, of course, but that I think we'll see a shift, just my opinion. I think the shift will just be to the functionality, the features, what makes these systems good. And the fact that it's cloud is almost like a secondary. Yeah, it's not that I think cloud will go away. I think there was a time, and it lasted a long time, where the headline of the product was that it was cloud before you even got into what it can do, before you got into any of the features, it was cloud, and that's what was special.
Well, I think that goes back to the market share before, right? If you just, whether your product worked or not, as long as you were able to get, some market share. Now I have, this many, now I have some white pages, now I have some market material, now I have this many customers,
Sure.
And I don't think we're going to see software companies, I think we're going to see more software companies go into cloud. Maybe it's kind of a hiatus, but I think we're not going to see the evolution of these OEMs and software providers. I think we're going to see more and more solutions for it, and maybe it improves, and maybe it just becomes a backup as well too. I don't, okay, I need to keep 180 days. I know there's some agencies out there and everything need to keep their storage for extremely long time. Maybe it's not on-prem. Maybe it's, somewhere else that has some crazy RAID configuration where it's not going to, get deleted or anything like that. So maybe it's just archiving.
No, for sure. No, so that's, I think cloud's going to be a big part of our future. I just don't think it's going to be the same buzzword, I guess is my judgment on it. But, okay. So again, talking about the fact how I knew you was working for a manufacturer. I mean, I know a lot of people really liked working with you. They saw you as an important person to get to know with your stature day 3 and what your role was. What were you looking for? Because you probably had a bunch of idiots like me knocking on your door wanting to come talk to you. I mean, what were you looking for in terms of a product or a relationship for you to take some of your valuable time and be willing to talk to a new manufacturer?
So a lot of offerings over there, and you really had to come up with something new and different that maybe I wasn't aware of, or maybe there's a fit as an add-on. We were pretty happy with our majority of our higher level partners, if you will. So if somebody was coming in saying, "Hey, I have this new product and I'd like to sit down," okay, is it an offering that we already have? Is it if it is an offering we already have, what are the pros and cons to it? And don't sell me on the pros. Tell me also why it doesn't work. So I can also compare that. I'd like a partner to be transparent with me, and again, not just there for the sell. I think there are some out there just trying to get a box sell out of relationships. And I think there are some actually that are there that are going to be there through the long haul. Okay, who are you working with on the A&E side? Are you getting your items spec'd in on bids, or or are you talking with consultants or anything like that to make sure that you're getting listed in here? What are you doing on a lead generation side as well too? How many partners do you have in this region? So a lot of those questions I would ask, because obviously I don't want to jump on ship with a partner if everybody in the whole wide world is selling it already. What's the differentiation there?
Right.
How do I know that we actually have a good partnership? How do I know that I'm going to be solely selling yours, and then when you have a lead, that they're coming to me and not somebody else, right?
Right.
So lead generation, and I don't think that's just on the manufacturing or software or anybody else's side. I think that's also if they're bringing leads to an integrator, that integrator also needs to be running with their product as well too, or at least know where that fits up for the particular customer base. And just candid conversation. If we're going to have a meeting, don't leave the meeting without setting up another one. Not saying I need to see you next week or in a month. Maybe it's a quarter.
Right.
Let's have a conversation of it, just a regular candid conversation. How are things going? Where are you seeing number wise? The things that we see that we could help you guys improve. What are you seeing on your side to help us improve? And I feel like that's a true partnership, and that's what I'm usually looking for, is just a true partnership where each one's scratching each other's back, and not just, okay, sell this, but education. What are we doing for education as well too? That's a big piece. If we're going to do this and we're going to be really good with your product, are we training the sales team? Are we training the sales engineers? Are we training all the implementation folks? Those are completely different discussions and training classes, in my opinion. So I look for some of those things when signing somebody up. Definitely have signed up some we've done really, really well with. Signed up some, couldn't sell the first thing.
Right.
And it's a live and learn, so and you've got to be on the same page as well too. If some manufacturer is having a new account manager once a month and I'm just meeting a new account manager, okay, maybe there's a red flag there. What's going on over there?
Right.
And how am I supposed to get synergy going with somebody new? So there's a lot to it when it comes to a partnership, and especially a new partnership when you already have a pretty good offering going on. It's going to be a little difficult getting in there with something net new.
For sure. Do you think that the RSM is undervalued at times? Because I'm hearing a little bit of what I always felt as an integrator, which was, there's the product and that matters a bunch, and the training and that matters a bunch, but man, that local salesperson was everything to me, because if that person was very helpful, if I felt like there was a great relationship, if I could count on them, that meant a lot, and I felt like if I didn't know who my salesperson was going to be from one month to the next, or if I just felt like that salesperson was not the best representative. Do you think that all the manufacturers really get how important that RSM role is?
I think I don't know if the manufacturers forget. I think sometimes the RSMs are put in tough positions, maybe by the manufacturers, that maybe they aren't capable of giving as much attention as they probably should. But I've had some RSMs who are still some of my best friends today in the industry, where even if I'm talking to them about a product or an opportunity, and they say, hey, well, I have this product that can do this, but you really need to maybe go look at this person's, that really sounds like maybe the solution, and you need to take a look at, and maybe that's a better solution for this opportunity. And if one person's able to do that for me, that's like gaining the trust for an integrator to the end user, right? Okay, maybe I'm not able to do that, but here you go. I can connect you with somebody to be able to take care of this portion. Again, that's gaining trust. I've always gone back to that person. He was always been my first call. Hey, I have this opportunity going on. He's like, okay, perfect. This time I've got you covered, from A to Z, um, but never afraid of being transparent if it's something he might not be able to help me out with. And I think that goes a long way, instead of just being also just, hey, selling. Um, so back to your question on the RSM, I think they are overlooked I think some have probably such a high, what's the word for it? A number to meet.
Oh, their quota.
Their quota that they have to be thinking of, not while even when they're in a meeting with you, they're thinking about the next meeting and the meeting after that and the next one, and they're already so far ahead that you can read it on their face sometimes that they're not involved with what the conversation's happening right there in front of them. So I don't want to blame them. People are a little bit differently. I don't want to push blame on them. Sometimes it might be, again, going back to their quota and the pressure that they're receiving from others.
True, but you have it too. I think that's something where you got to be able to handle that. Like, you're dealing with a number of end users, and each one needs to feel like you're there with them and your focus is on them, and their project, their service is what matters to you most. And you've got to be able to go and deal with any number of end user customers and make them feel that way. You can't go in and just because, Tony and Bob said, hey, hurry up and get this done, and you need to be dealing with other projects. You can't go in and make that customer feel that. So that's
sure.
That is, it's a hard job sometimes. I mean, because yes, you do have that condition, but I do think that you have to, if you're going to be truly proficient at it, you do have to find a way to like shut that off while you're in that meeting. Think about that in the car.
No, 100%. You have to be present, right? I mean, and that's just almost anything that we do as human beings. Whether it be the family, friends, business, we've got to be present, and people can pick up on it if you're not. So, I mean, it goes way beyond just this conversation, in my opinion. And maybe that's when, if you're not able to be present, then maybe that's time. Maybe that's when there's a conversation. Okay, I'm getting 100 calls a day. I need to be here. I need to be there. I need to be there. Right. Maybe there's a conversation with management being like, okay, maybe it's time to bring another team member on. I'm losing customers based on the needs and wants going on. So I think that conversation would go a couple different ways.
So speaking of these relationships, I know end user sales is often a touchy subject with some, and I'll be honest with you, when I was an integrator, it was a very touchy subject with me because of a couple of things that happened. But I've had some interesting conversations like with Lindsay Martinez and others about, maybe some of the approaches that Verkada and others have taken, where we definitely see that the manufacturers now more and more want to have more influence, more involvement with the end user. Right. And there's some mixed reactions to that out there. I think I've been on the other team too long now. I start to see it differently. But maybe I'm just not as biased as I used to be. Maybe the sting of those bad experiences has long gone. I mean, what's your perspective on that? Because I know you touched on before about having that kind of tight relationship where you can work together, to take care of these customers. I mean, do you see that as, if I can't trust them to be around my customers and help me with my customers, it's just not the right solution, not the right relationship? Or are you one that kind of says, look, I need to keep a little distance here to protect myself regardless?
I think my thought process has changed over the years. I was very, very, very independent initially going on. Didn't want them, the manufacturer was there. I wanted to be the person to bring the manufacturer in, not that manufacturer, initiate the conversation or anything like that. I wanted continuity. If you're going to talk with the end user, I want to show that there's continuity between, your team and our team. And we're having the same discussion. So if the integrator has already had that conversation relationship with the end user, I'm not a big fan of the manufacturer going in after the fact. If that manufacturer has initiated that conversation, and maybe that's not a customer on my list, and they're bringing me a lead, I'm not going to really be too upset about that one, right?
Right.
So, but I do understand. I think that's also why you don't make your portfolio too large. One, if you're if if I do go in with a particular solution, more than likely, possibly, I'm upsetting another manufacturer that I might be partners with, and they might be talking to them behind my back and bringing in another one. So I think, and that could be whether you're partners with them or not. Um, I I'm kind of going in circles with this, and I apologize.
No, you're good.
It can work a couple of different ways, and just like you said, you've seen it on both sides. Um, so
It's not clear cut.
yeah, I'd like the end user to be sticky with me. Period. Whatever the solution is, me being biased as always been an integrator, I'd like that. I'd like to have that stickiness with them, because I'm gonna have to deal with them throughout the whole process. Again, not just sell a certain product. I'm gonna have to do different trades to be able to do this solution altogether. I might be able to offer again. Maybe there's we did AV as well too. Maybe there's another opportunity to be able to present AV. So I'd like to be the prime. I guess might be the best word for it. I think the integrator should be prime, because I think there could be other opportunities involved there, and then the manufacturer be a support person or a tool or company or partner through it. That's kind of how I feel about it. But I know it works a couple of different ways. So maybe that's on a design build. If there's an RFP solution, they've probably already talked to a lot of manufacturers through the A&E process. Here's my list of 4 or 5, acceptable ones that you can bid with. And then I've also seen on a bid opportunity, when you're on a short list, that same manufacturer is going in with 2 other integrators. So it's like, okay, so again, where's the stickiness with the end user, and also where's the stickiness with the partnership with the manufacturer for the integrator?
No, I think that's reasonable. I think as a manufacturer, you always worry, and I've had this happen to me, where you would maybe bring in, somebody saw the product and they're interested in the product, and then it makes its way back to you as like the RSM, and you bring that opportunity to somebody. And I've had a few times where somebody would then suggest a different product. So I can understand like not wanting to have that happen, but also the integrator doesn't want that happening to them either. I mean, I had a couple really bad circumstances of that. One was a distributor, one was a manufacturer, where they came in and just sold it out from under us. And so I was at a place before I came over the manufacturer side that I was kind of known as being a bit of a pain in the neck, because if I gave you, like, I would want a project registration, but it would be like, we did a bunch of fiber work for Muirfield here, where they do the memorial, and it didn't matter what it was. I never gave you the name. It was Uncle Josh's fancy golf house. It was something like I would not tell you, and I wouldn't let anybody tell. And because I got burned a couple times, and I had zero trust of sharing any of that information. I said, you don't need it. You don't need to be involved. And there's no value for you to get involved that way. But then as a manufacturer, I saw, like, man, I really missed out on a lot of help.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot that I could have been assisted with. I think I just was so scorned after this couple of times. Again, kind of like we talked about how you break your proposal down. Instead of saying, here's the right way to do business, you're not going to win every time. It's not always going to go the way that you want. I had too strong of a reaction. So I think it's funny sometimes, like when I had that conversation with Lindsay about Verkada and, some of these, different ways that we may look at this, I thought it was funny about like how full circle I've come because I was at an extreme with it. So, I mean, I think your approach to me sounds very healthy. I expect to have a good relationship. I expect you to help us out. It sounds like if somebody brings you a lead, you're going to really focus on them with that, treat them right with that. And, you see that as part of the relationship. I mean, that seems pretty healthy to me.
Yeah, and to your point, I've seen it happen both ways as well too. I've seen it to where a lead has come into the company I was with, and it did get switched. I've seen it to where we brought a manufacturer in, and they switched integrators.
Right.
And nobody that's
That's
probably
upsetting.
yes.
That's very upsetting.
Yeah, for both. So
For both.
I don't know if we're ever going to get away from that. It's going to happen. So it's really
Choose your
really
friends
just having
wisely
really good
and
partnerships with on both sides, and just I think some transparency. It's going to happen though.
I would agree with that. Do you think that the end user themselves have changed in recent years? Because I remember a time in the late 90s, early 2000s where honestly, they didn't know anything.
Right.
I mean, we'd put our proposal in the little, we had the little machine and you'd open up the plastic binder and put your PowerPoint basically on paper. Then 15 people would go to present the proposal and nobody knew anything. Do you think customers are way more educated now? Do you think customers are more involved with driving the solution and what they want?
I do. I don't think it's every single customer, but I think for some of the larger customers that have maybe some of the IT staff have a facility staff. It just still depends on where the system is going to live and who's going to own it. But I really do think the end users, a lot of them are getting more trained. Some of them are going to manufacturer's certification if they chose a certain system because they do want to be self-sufficient. Some of them don't really, some of them just don't really care. But I think overall, also sometimes it depends on mission critical stuff. They need somebody on staff. They might have a SOC or something like that they need to be able to function. Watching however many streams and doors and everything else they might be watching, or alarm points. But overall, I think I do believe end users are getting a lot more educated, and and that might be them reaching out to manufacturers and getting some know-how, or what can this camera do, what can this actual control board do or system do, and stuff like that. So I think they're getting a much better understanding of what they're asking for and requesting than they had in previous years. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think honestly that's good.
Yeah.
I see that as a positive.
I agree.
So something that I see everywhere I go now, it's not just because I'm in the industry. I mean, you just anywhere you go shopping, anywhere you go for an experience, everywhere you have these mobile security trailers now.
Yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, is this like just a really good idea that's taken off? Do you think we're overdoing it? Do you think that this is going to evolve? I mean, what are your thoughts around these mobile security solutions?
Well, going back to the shows, that seems to be one of the bigger product areas that are growing. I remember going to the shows years ago, and there might be one, maybe two. You go to them, the most recent one again in ISC West, it was, I don't know how many, there were tons and tons of them. And I keep hearing about more and more and more. I think there's some really good spaces for them, and I think again, also talk about cloud, because some of them, can you have a little something local? Absolutely. You can put some SD cards in, record, and then stream up, or have a failover that way. Some of them I've seen with servers, in the chassis. But I do think that is a pretty good solution. In the ones I've seen them, they're starting to do not just cellular, but with Starlink. So you're able to start putting these in a few more remote locations, whether it be parking lots that there's just not any infrastructure, and you don't have power to do a point-to-point from a building. Construction sites, that seems to be the really big location for them all. Because I think even I think they're all mandated to have some kind of recording nowadays. I don't know if that's a regional thing or across the United States, but I believe construction sites, and again, just anywhere that you just don't have infrastructure, power, connectivity, anything like that. I mean, there's still gonna be some places where you might be, I think this is where Starlink comes in, where you might be a little spotty on cell service. But again, Starlink, I haven't really looked at a map to know where it's not able to provide some kind of service, but I'm sure there's some blank spots, but that seems to be the go-to when cell's down. But overall, I think that industry is booming. I think it's getting a little saturated. I think a lot of people have seen that there's a lot of possibilities there, and a lot of people are jumping in like feet first. So it'd be interesting to see who kind of comes out on top. I know there's some front runners in that space.
There's one big one for sure.
Mm-hmm. There is, and I think there's a few on their tails, but everybody knows the big one, and I don't know what that market share also looks like or where that's going to stop. The people have got to be finding something if everybody seems to be building one nowadays.
Yeah, I almost wonder, like, is there also like maybe just a cost perspective? Because I know that sometimes with the big one, there's a certain way that you buy that's subscription based, and it's not inexpensive. I see it everywhere. So I definitely see a lot of customers that find the value in that. But I know from getting some proposals that, there's some variance in price. So maybe just some are trying to come in and compete on a price basis, maybe.
Sure. I've seen that. I know what some of the ranges are. I know a couple of them that are manufacturing a few. So have kind of had conversations about what their cost is, depending on what the going rental rate for them is. It seems to be like a pretty good opportunity for a lot of people. And I think what you are seeing are some people kind of taking some of the bells and whistles out of some of the larger ones to keep costs down.
Sure.
For some end users. I guess it's really going to depend on the environment and application, and also knowing different cameras take different kind of power, and there's a lot that goes into the power requirements for these trailers. If you open one up and take a look at it, it's pretty fascinating to look at what kind of batteries they're using, to the solar and how they're converting the solar into, maybe it's a 12 or 24 or whatever DC, and maybe some of it's still high voltage as well too, depending on devices.
Yeah, and I just can't help but wonder. I mean, I know some that are working on solutions like this, and I don't want to give away anybody's secrets, but I really think that there's a huge future with drone technology in combination with these trailers. So you have some of your static security that's at the trailer, and I'm sure you have something like that. It's not like I have some inside knowledge, but just I have so many things in my life that are NDA. Sometimes I can't keep track of what is, so I say nothing. But
not understood.
I mean, I think with AI and the ability to make these drones smarter and smarter, I think that's going to be the next wave of it, as these security trailers are going to also become like a kind of a central hub for drones. They're
going to have your little
patrol, and
exactly. That's where I'm sure there's more to it than that. I mean, drones are also one of the next big things, right? Whether we're going to use them as maybe a guard dog, if you will, or doing patrols, or we're defending against them, or using them as an attack, or I mean, that's probably a whole nother big conversation.
Well, if you look at the two major global conflicts right now, drones have, in recent days, have played huge roles and in a very proactive attacking way.
I agreed.
And I think that we're not only going to have that capability in terms of defending life and property, but we're also going to have to defend against, I mean, I don't know if people just understand the Wild West we may be facing with drones, because you can go out and buy a drone And there's so much that you can do, with it. I mean, I'm not going to say ideas and give people ideas, but there's some horrible things that I think we're going to see in the future that come from drones and are used in ways. And sometimes the best defense may be drones themselves, and having drones on patrol and ready to react and to use countermeasures, to stop that.
I think we're going to be seeing quite a huge evolution in that, especially just like you said, with the some of the unfortunate incidences that are happening around the world. Just everybody outside looking in. I'm sure it's been worked on quite a bit and involving them. It's probably going to be stepped up a little bit faster, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, think about what just happened in Russia when Ukraine released drones that were hiding in cargo containers, and then when they opened them, they were able to remotely activate them, and they blew up almost their entire fleet of bombers.
That's crazy.
I mean, that is like something from a movie, and you would say, yeah, right. I mean, I just feel like we still don't know what the giant drones were over New Jersey, right? I mean, they weren't aliens.
No.
Somebody was testing.
I think they came out with something like that. I forget what I read or heard, but
did they have an answer on that? Was that like a defense contractor, or probably what you said?
I don't want to speak incorrectly. I thought they did come out and have an explanation for it. But yeah, I don't think they were. Obviously, it caught everybody off guard because there wasn't any notice that these were going to happen. But I believe there's a reason for they put out a bulletin of what happened there.
Okay, I figured it was ours on some level, and they were testing them. But I mean, that is going to be the next big thing. But I think that's also, if you're in security, that's something that. And I was being laughed at a few years ago. I don't think I get laughed at now, but I'm like, you really need to be thinking about drone technology and how this can, enhance your security solutions and where this is going to go. Because I think as the AI gets better, these things are going to be much more autonomous.
Agreed.
Which leads me to one of my last two questions here. I'll jump into the last one first, since we're on this topic. Anyone that follows me on any podcasts will know that I am very pro AGI. I'm very pro, and I always say it wrong on purpose, so I'll clarify that here. I call it AGI is autonomous general intelligence. I know it's artificial general intelligence, but when you say autonomous, people know what you're talking about. You're talking about we're getting to a place that the robots can walk amongst us and participate in society and do. And I think getting into this drone discussion is part of that. These drones to be smart enough to understand what to do, where to go, and to sort of evolve out there. I mean, I see this as a huge positive, but how do you see it? Is this exciting? You're first in line to get one, or is this a scary future?
I don't know if I'm first in line to get one, but I do think that it's inevitable. I mean, they're already out there. People are using them for all kinds of different things. I do think I could see some benefits of not like anything aggressive like the war or anything like that, but would an extra hand around the house kind of be helpful?
For sure.
Cut the yard, clean the house, do this, do that, I'm all about some of those things. But to your point, with drones, I think I watched something the other day. There was some marathon, and there was like 23 robots with like 1,500 people, and they were doing the marathon as well too.
Really?
It was more just movement than anything else, right? I think that was over in China or something like that. I don't recall. But I think it's inevitable. It's something that we keep seeing evolving. Now you have the AI, the chats, the whatever flavor you want to use online, and obviously those are dumbed down to some of the ones that can actually think for themselves. If I think it's just a matter of time before some of that actually really develops and gets into place. And I'll be honest, first one to buy one, I don't know what these are going to cost. I'm probably not going to be able to afford one, to be honest. I don't
I would
know.
have some kind of plan how it could pay for itself. I mean, that'd be the first thing I'd ask it. How can I make back the money I spent on you?
There you go. Yeah,
It should be able to help me with that, right?
it should, in theory.
I mean, I have a lot of concerns if you just look at basic numbers. I mean, you're almost my age. I think you're a little younger than me, but I think we're in the same neighborhood.
I think so.
You know, our parents, the average was just under 5 children per family. And then you get in, I'm at the end of Gen X, almost millennial. You know, I'm in that generation Y. We had both worlds. You know, it's like 3 something. And then you get into millennial and it's like 2. And then you get into Z and alpha, it's like we're at like 1 and dropping.
Right.
At some point, we don't have enough people, regardless of immigration, which I think we need to handle it better. But we've always had immigration here. It's how we've always built this country. It's just, it's not being managed well at all. But it's not going to be enough. Like, we've literally, if you think about that generation where it was 5 per, they're still working. So think of the drop off that's going to occur between each generation. So my concern would be that we're going to experience just economically, just leave all the other stuff out of it. I mean, our whole economy is based on growth. And it's not going to work anymore as we lose people. So I see them as a gap filler where, quite frankly, you may not have enough firefighters or police or doctors or people to pull cable and install cameras. You know, I think there will be a bad part initially because we haven't experienced that cliff. But then I think there will be a couple generations down where they're going to be like, thank God we have these robots, because like nothing would be happening. Like, I think they may save us economically.
It's very possible. I think we're already seeing some of that in some places. I mean, maybe it's just assembly lines, right? So we've already seen that in past years, you know, just putting stuff together, robots coming in, being able to lift heavier items, you know, put together probably a little bit more precision, not having that human error, if you will. And then we add some thought process to it. Shoot, I mean, I can get on Chat GPT right now and say, hey, you know, write this program for me and write me a whole script where I can just copy and paste.
Sure.
You know, so I think we're seeing some of that now. So so that will take some of that burden of what you're talking about probably away. But I think we're also going to have to see where the next generations, maybe it's not being the doctor, being the lawyer or anything like that, that we could have some of these AI, AGI robots even doing. What are going to be the next trades that they would need to jump into to, you know, whether it be managing them, these AGI robots or whatever it might be. But I think you're right. I think just the reduce in workforce that we're going to be seeing, because I've seen the same thing. You know, I have 2 siblings, so there was 3 of us. But all my friends, it's you know, today is 1 or 2, and just like you're commenting on, and it's going to have to be a supplement. I wish I could see the future and tell you exactly how that was going to be, but I
worry that we'll fall off a cliff if we don't have a solution to this, because that is significant when you're talking about, and it takes so many years for it to occur. And we as humans, we're not good at thinking ahead and evaluating. We're just worried. We got so much going on. We're just kind of worried about what's in front of us. But you know, you're talking about a generation that's still largely in the workforce, where it's almost 5 people per family. And now who's entering the workforce now, it's under 2.
Yeah, well,
I mean, that is a huge drop in population. I think that's
what we saw and that what we're seeing in China, really.
For sure.
Because you know,
self-imposed.
That's kind of what what's happening over there. Their workforce has been dropping off due to some of their policies in the past.
I mean, one child for decades that you're allowed to have. I mean, that gives me hope. That's where I look at this and I say, look, I think we're going to have a rough period of time, and maybe it's worse for me as an individual because maybe I'm in that buffer area where we don't have that huge drop in population yet. So for me, it's more of a burden potentially. But, I think for my kids and their kids, I think, this could be what prevents a decline of our civilization, because we can put robots out there to do so many different things. If this AGI is on schedule, like they say, they say it'll be like 2028 is around the time that should be generally available.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's ready now. It just hasn't been.
I feel like it's close. I feel like it's close. We, it's not safe yet or whatever, but I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think my parents' generation and the generation before in the old movies, it was always, remember HAL from 2001, it was always the robots were going to take over, Terminator. I mean, all these things, but, and I probably would have felt that way a while ago, but the more I've understood our population decline, the more I've thought, this may be the answer. This may be a really good thing. So
yeah, I think either way you look at it, there could be a positive and a little scary. Maybe it's because I'm used to the Terminator stuff as well too, and everybody just turn on, what was it, Skynet or something like that. Yeah. It's just like, oh crap.
I feel like in some sense we've already got that. So
true.
I feel like there's some level of that going on. All right, last question. You've been a great sport. I appreciate you hanging on a little extra and really enjoyed talking to you. Obviously I worked for a manufacturer for the last decade or for a few. And, just as a courtesy to them out there that may be watching and listening, I mean, you've got some great insight based on the role that you've had for so long and the side you've been on. I mean, what would be your advice? I mean, what is something you're always looking for when these manufacturers are calling on you that maybe you don't see enough, or maybe just general advice you would have for them to be better at like hitting the mark, to get that opportunity for some of your time?
That's a great question. For me, I've always been kind of independent and never really depend. I wanted my knowledge of certain products to, speak for itself. But, I think just going back, it's kind of, I feel like this is a little bit the same as one of the other questions. But as a partnership question, what I'm looking for on a new product a little bit, again, just honesty, transparency. Don't say your product can do everything when I know it can't. Stop by every now and again. Mostly, set up and on the calendar. But if you're in the area, go ahead and stop by to check in. Know that if we have a great partnership, know that I'm leading with your product, and so hopefully I feel give me comfort that you're leading with my team. So that's probably the most to it, is just being a good person. And if we can do that, you have a good product. There's no reason why we can't have a great partnership.
Well, I think that's great advice. Yeah. Well, Tristan, I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm really glad you agreed to come on. I try so hard to get integrators to come on this program, and I think you have a great perspective. I think you have great experience. I know you're very well respected out there. So I know your time is valuable. It means a lot. For anybody that maybe wants to get a hold of you, I know you're evaluating your next opportunity, trying to decide which direction you want to go. If you haven't already decided and somebody wants to hit you up, what's the best way for them to find you?
Probably right now is just on LinkedIn. It's just Tristan Soule. I don't have my URL or anything like that handy to post.
We'll put it in the video description.
Okay, we can do that. So that would probably just be the best way and easiest way. And I'm checking that pretty regularly. So if anybody wants to reach out, feel free. Happy to have a conversation with you.
I love it. Well, please keep in touch. I hope we stay tight over the coming years. Wish you the best of luck. I know whoever you end up with, they're going to be awfully damn lucky to have you.
Appreciate it,
Um,
Josh.
So for the rest of you, thanks again for joining. We got more episodes coming up in the near future. If you are in a low voltage industry and you would like some help with marketing, bowmanvisionmedia.com. Again, my name is Josh, and we'll see you next time.